Breaking down the book, Becoming Supernatural, How Common People Are Doing the Uncommon, by Dr. Joe Dispenza. Chapter 1, Opening the Door to the Supernatural. When I first cracked open Chapter 1, I realized Joe isn't just trying to give us a self-help talk. He starts by hitting us with stories of people who did the impossible, people who healed themselves of terminal illnesses or chronic pain just by using their minds. My first thought was, is this for real? But as I sat with it, I realized the core message. We have been conditioned to believe we are limited by our biology. This chapter is the wake-up call that tells us we are actually built to be supernatural. The way I see it, most of us live in a loop. We wake up, check our phones, drink our coffee, and drive the same route to work. We're basically living in the past because our bodies are just reacting to the same old triggers. Dr. Joe explains that your brain is a record of the past. If you're thinking the same thoughts as yesterday, you're creating the same future. To be supernatural simply means breaking that cycle and doing something that isn't natural to your habit-driven self. One of the big takeaways for me here was the story of Anna. She had a devastating series of health crises and trauma. She was literally dying because her body was stuck in a state of high stress. This is what Joe calls living in survival mode. When you're in survival, your fight or flight nervous system is always on. You're looking for threats, and your energy is all going toward not dying instead of repairing and creating. Anna's turning point came when she realized she had to stop being Anna, the victim of her circumstances, and start becoming someone else. I love the way he frames this. You have to lose your mind to create a new one. It sounds a bit wild, but think about it. If your current mind got you to where you are, and you don't like where you are, you can't take that mind with you to the next level. You have to step into the unknown. My personal reflection on this is that we often wait for a crisis like Anna did to change. We wait for the diagnosis, the breakup, or the job loss to finally say, I'm done. But the beauty of this book is that it's an invitation to change through joy and inspiration rather than pain and suffering. Dr. Joe lays out the how very simply. You have to change your energy. If you want a new life, you have to become a different person. That means your personality, which is made up of how you think, act, and feel, has to change. If you change your personality, you change your personal reality. It's a simple equation, but it's the hardest thing you'll ever do because the body loves the familiar, even if the familiar is miserable. My key takeaway. I'm not a victim of my genes or my past. I'm a victim of my habits. To open the door to the supernatural, I have to be willing to be no one, no body, in no place, in no time. I have to get beyond myself. This chapter is where the rubber meets the road. In Chapter 1, we talked about the possibility of change, but Chapter 2 explains the biggest obstacle to that change. The fact that our bodies are literally addicted to the past. I've realized that most of us think we're living in the present, but we're actually just memory machines. Dr. Joe explains that if you wake up and immediately start thinking about your problems, your bills, your boss, your ex, you are immediately living in the past. Those thoughts trigger familiar feelings of stress, sadness, or anxiety, because your body doesn't know the difference between an actual event and a thought. It starts producing the same chemistry as if those problems were happening right now. This is the habituation of the self. Your body becomes the mind. If you felt insecure or stressed for 10 years, your body is now biologically programmed to be insecure or stressed. It actually craves those stress hormones like a drug. So when you try to sit down and meditate or think positive, your body starts protesting. It says, hey, where's my hit of cortisol? Why aren't we miserable? This is uncomfortable. Joe calls this the generous present moment. I love that phrasing. To get into this moment, you have to pull your energy out of the past, your memories, and out of the future, your anxieties about what might happen. Think about it like a battery. If you have 50% of your energy tied up in a resentment from 3 years ago and 40% tied up in worrying about a meeting tomorrow, you only have 10% left to create a new life. No wonder we feel tired and stuck. To get to the supernatural, you have to become pure consciousness. This was a big aha moment for me. It means you have to get to a point where you forget you're a person with a name, a job, a house, and a certain face. You have to become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, in no time. When you are in that void, you aren't defined by your past. You are just awareness. That is the only place where you can actually plant the seeds of a new future. My takeaway here is that the present moment is the only place where the divine or the quantum field exists. You can't create a new future from the old you. You have to leave the you behind. It's like trying to log into a new computer with an old, corrupted password. It just won't work. You have to reset the system. When you sit in that stillness and stop reacting to the itch on your nose or the thought of your emails, you are telling your body that you are the master, not the habit. You're reclaiming your energy. It's not about doing anything. It's about being in the sweet spot of the now where all possibilities exist. My key takeaway. If my attention is on my familiar life, my energy is in the past. To change my life, I have to take my attention off everything material and put it on the nothingness of the present moment. That's where the magic happens. Chapter 3, tuning into new potentials in the quantum. Chapter 3 is where things get a bit trippy, but it's also where the science really starts to back up the woo-woo. Dr. Joe introduces us to the quantum field, which is basically an invisible field of energy and information that exists beyond our physical senses. My biggest takeaway here was the shift in how I view reality. We've been taught to look at the world as matter to matter, but Joe says we need to look at it as energy to matter. In our everyday lives, we focus on the 3D reality. This is the world of things you can touch, smell, and see. In this world, everything takes time. If you want to get from point A to point B, you have to move your body through space, and it takes a certain amount of minutes or hours. But in the quantum, which Joe calls the 5D reality, there is no space or time as we know it. All possibilities exist right now as frequency or vibe. This blew my mind. Every potential version of your life already exists in the quantum field as an electromagnetic signature. There's a version of you that is healthy, a version that is wealthy, and a version that is a world traveler. They aren't out there in the future. They are right here in the field as energy. The reason we don't experience them is that we aren't tuned into their frequency. We are still broadcasting the frequency of our old selves, the stressed or lacking version. Think of it like a radio. If you want to hear jazz, you can't be tuned to 97.5 FM if that's a rock station. You have to turn the dial. In the same way, if you want a new life, you have to change your electromagnetic signature. Joe breaks this down into a simple formula. Clear intention. Elevated emotion. Clear intention. This is the thought. It's the what. You have to be specific about what you want to create. Elevated emotion. This is the feeling. This is where most people fail. They wait for the thing to happen before they feel the gratitude. But in the quantum, you have to feel the gratitude before the event happens. When you combine a clear thought of your future with the feeling of how that future would actually taste, smell, and feel, you broadcast a whole new signal into the field. And here's the kicker. When your signal matches the signal of that potential in the quantum, the event finds you. You don't have to go chase it. You become a magnet. I spent a lot of time reflecting on this. I realized how often I want something but feel the lack of it. I'm thinking about a new job, but I'm feeling the stress of my current one. That's a mixed signal. The universe, or the field, doesn't respond to what we want. It responds to who we are being. To tune in, you have to get back to that state we talked about in Chapter 2, being nobody, no one, no thing. When you are purely consciousness, you are no longer limited by your physical body or your past. You are just a point of awareness in the infinite blackness of the field. From that place, you can pick any frequency you want and start to embody it. My key takeaway: I need to stop trying to predict how my life will change and start vibrating at the level of the change I want. If I can feel the gratitude for a healed body or a full bank account before it shows up, the quantum field has no choice but to organize reality to match my energy. Chapter 4. The Blessing of the Energy Centers. Chapter 4 is where Joe bridges the gap between ancient Eastern medicine and modern Western science. He starts talking about the energy centers, which most of us know as chakras. But in his straightforward scientific way, he describes them as individual centers of information, or mini brains. Each of these centers has its own frequency, its own mind, and its own purpose. They are connected to specific plexuses of nerves and endocrine glands in our bodies. When Joe explains this, it makes so much sense. If your energy is stuck in the lower 3 centers, you're basically just functioning on animal instinct. The first 3 centers are all about survival. 1. First center: survival, reproduction, and security. 2. Second center: consumption, digestion, and social sexual relationships. 3. Third center: power, control, and self-will. Most people spend 95% of their lives here. We're worried about money, obsessed with what people think of us, or stuck in a cycle of doing to prove our worth. When we live this way, we're constantly using up our light and energy. We're literally bleeding our life force out of these lower centers to deal with the emergencies of daily life. The aha moment for me in this chapter was the concept of the blessing of the energy centers meditation. The goal isn't just to balance them. It's to move the energy out of the survival centers and up into the heart, the 4th center, and the brain, the 5th, 6th, and 7th centers. When energy hits the heart, you start feeling selfless emotions like gratitude, compassion, and love. When it hits the brain, you tap into intuition and higher consciousness. But to get it there, you have to learn how to put your attention on each center and bless it. Joe says where you place your attention is where you place your energy. By putting your awareness on each center and its surrounding space, you're essentially retuning the frequency of that mini brain. What I found really reflective about this is how much of my own energy was stuck in 3rd center mode, always trying to control the outcome, or feeling frustrated when things didn't go my way. Joe explains that when these centers are out of balance, the organs associated with them start to break down. Physical illness is often just a reflection of stuck energy. The process of blessing them is about slowing down your brainwaves and talking to your autonomic nervous system. You're telling these centers to switch from survival to growth and repair. You're literally cleaning up the signal. When you do this correctly, you start to feel a sense of wholeness. You don't feel needy anymore because you've activated the centers that connect you to the field. My key takeaway: my body is an instrument. If I'm only playing the bottom 3 notes, I'm missing the whole symphony. I need to consciously move my energy up from survival to creation. When I bless these centers, I'm not just meditating, I'm defragmenting my internal hard drive and aligning my biology with a higher frequency. Chapter 5. Reconditioning the Body to a New Mind. Chapter 5 is probably the most intense part of the book because it introduces the breath. If you've ever seen videos of Joe's workshops where people are breathing heavily and looking like they're having a massive internal breakthrough, this is what they are doing. This chapter explains the how and the why behind that technique. Joe starts by explaining a concept that really hit home for me. The body is the subconscious mind. It doesn't know the difference between an actual experience and a memory. Over years of living in stress, we store energy in our bodies, specifically in those lower 3 survival centers we talked about in Chapter 4. This energy is literally trapped there as emotions like guilt, shame, anger, or lust. Think of your spinal cord as a vacuum tube. Normally, energy just sits at the base. Joe's breathing technique is designed to create a pumping action that pulls that trapped energy up through the spinal column and all the way into the brain. He uses the analogy of a syringe. By contracting your intrinsic muscles, the pelvic floor and lower abs, and taking a deep, slow breath, you're creating an upward pressure. The goal here is to push that cerebrospinal fluid against the pineal gland. When this happens, it's like flipping a switch in your brain. You're moving from the survival nervous system to the rest and repair system, but with a massive kick of energy. This is how you pull the mind out of the body. You're telling your body, you're not the boss anymore. I am. What I found most reflective about this chapter is the idea of liberation. Joe says that when you successfully move that energy, you feel a release. All that energy that was used to hold on to a grudge or worry about money is suddenly available for you to use for creation. It's like finding a hidden savings account of energy you didn't know you had. I'll be honest, the first time I read about this, it sounded a bit like biohacking. But the way he explains the physics, how the heart and brain become coherent, makes it feel very grounded. When your heart and brain are in sync, you broadcast a much stronger signal into the quantum field. You aren't just wishing for a better life. You are physically and energetically becoming it. The breath is the tool that breaks the addiction to the past. It's a physical way to demand that your body move out of its comfort zone of misery and into a state of high-frequency energy. It's not always easy, it takes practice and focus, but the payoff is a level of clarity and supernatural energy that you just can't get from a cup of coffee or a positive affirmation. My key takeaway: my breath is a bridge. It's the tool I use to take the energy I've locked up in my past traumas and move it into my brain to create a new future. I'm not just sitting there breathing, I'm pumping my own evolution. Chapter 6, Heart Coherence. If Chapter 5 was about the engine, the breath, Chapter 6 is about the compass. In this chapter, Dr. Joe focuses entirely on the heart. For a long time, we were taught that the brain is the command center of the body. But Joe flips the script by showing us that the heart has its own independent nervous system, a mini brain with over 40,000 neurons. It actually sends more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. This chapter really hit home for me because it explains why thinking your way to a new life isn't enough. You can repeat affirmations until you're blue in the face, but if your heart is still feeling resentment, frustration, or lack, the brain won't believe the message. This is what Joe calls incoherence. When we are stressed, our heart rhythm looks like a jagged, chaotic mountain range. That chaos travels straight to the brain, shutting down our creative centers and keeping us in survival mode. The goal of this chapter is to achieve heart coherence. This happens when you intentionally generate elevated emotions, like gratitude, appreciation, joy, or inspiration. When you do this, your heart starts to beat in a consistent, rhythmic, wave-like pattern. This sends a signal to the brain that the environment is safe, which allows the frontal lobe, the CEO of the brain, to open up. One of my favorite takeaways here is Joe's definition of gratitude. He says that gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. In our normal lives, we say thank you after something good happens. But in the quantum world, if you feel gratitude before the event occurs, your body literally believes the event has already happened. You are signaling your genes ahead of the environment. I found it really reflective to think about the magnetic power of the heart. While the brain's electrical signal is strong, the heart's magnetic field is up to 5,000 times stronger. The brain sends the thought, the electrical charge, out into the field. But the heart is what draws the experience back to you, the magnetic charge. If your heart is closed because you're afraid of being hurt again, you've basically turned off your magnet. You're broadcasting what you want, but you have no way to pull it in. Practicing heart coherence isn't just about feeling good, it's a skill. Joe explains that we have to practice opening our hearts until it becomes a habit. We have to be able to feel love for no reason or gratitude for life itself, even when our external circumstances are messy. This is the definition of becoming supernatural, being greater than your environment. When you sit in meditation and breathe through your heart center, you're creating a toroidal field of energy around your body. This field acts like a shield and a magnet at the same time. You start to feel whole. And when you feel whole, it's impossible to feel like you're lacking anything. And ironically, that is exactly when the things you want start showing up. My key takeaway. My heart is the bridge between the physical and the quantum. If I want to change my reality, I can't just think it. I have to feel it. By practicing heart coherence, I'm turning my body into a magnet for the future I'm envisioning. I'm moving from waiting for a reason to be happy to being happy as the reason for my new life. Chapter 7, Mental Rehearsals. Chapter 7 is where we learn how to prime our brain for a new reality. If the heart is the magnet, mental rehearsal is the blueprint. Dr. Joe explains that the brain doesn't know the difference between what we see out there in the world and what we see with our inner eye. This is a massive leverage point for us. I've always thought of imagination as something kids do, but Joe frames it as a serious neurological tool. He cites studies where people who mentally rehearsed playing piano scales for 5 days showed the same physical brain changes as the people who actually sat at a piano and practiced. Think about that. They grew new neural connections just by thinking. The secret sauce to mental rehearsal isn't just visualizing a goal. It's about becoming the person who has already achieved it. Joe talks about how we have to move from thinking to doing to being. Most of us get stuck in the thinking phase. We think about being wealthy or healthy, but our bodies are still being poor or sick. In this chapter, the focus is on the frontal lobe. This is the part of the brain that acts like a conductor. When you get into a deep state of meditation and start your mental rehearsal, the frontal lobe lowers the volume on everything else, your body, your environment, and time. It starts to map a new circuit in your brain. My personal takeaway here was the how-to. You have to plan your day in your mind, but not as a to-do list. You have to rehearse how you're going to act in specific situations. For example, if you usually get angry in traffic, you mentally rehearse yourself staying calm, centered, and grateful. You do it over and over until the brain literally thinks that calm version of you is the default setting. But here's the trick. You have to combine that mental image with the elevated emotion we talked about in the heart chapter. If you're imagining a new house but feeling the stress of your current mortgage, you're canceling out the signal. You have to rehearse the feeling of walking through that front door, the smell of the air, the touch of the handle, and the massive sense of relief and joy in your chest. Joe says that when you do this correctly, you install the hardware in your brain to look like the event has already happened. Now you're no longer looking for your future from the perspective of the past. You're looking at the world through the lens of your new future. You've changed your internal map, so your external world has no choice but to follow. It's about being defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past. I realized after reading this that I spent a lot of time worrying, which is actually just mental rehearsal for what I don't want. This chapter taught me to be just as disciplined with my imagination as I am with my gym routine. My key takeaway: I am the architect of my brain. If I spend time every morning mentally rehearsing who I want to be, I start the day with the software already installed. I don't have to try to be different. I've already rehearsed being that person so many times that it becomes my natural state. Lesson Chapter 8, The Walking Meditation. If you've been following along, you might be thinking, this is great when I'm sitting in my chair with my eyes closed. But what happens when I open them and my boss is yelling at me? That is exactly what Chapter 8 is about. Dr. Joe introduces the walking meditation, which is probably the most practical tool in the book for actually living a supernatural life. The problem most of us face is that We have a meditation self and a real world self. We spend 20 minutes feeling zen and connected in the morning, but the second we hit traffic or see a stack of bills, we revert right back to the old, stressed out version of ourselves. The walking meditation is designed to bridge that gap. It's about practicing how to walk as your future self with your eyes wide open. In this chapter, Joe explains that we need to be able to maintain our frequency while we are moving. He instructs us to start the meditation standing still, getting into that heart-coherent, elevated state we've been practicing. Then, while maintaining that feeling of wholeness and gratitude, you start to walk. But you aren't walking as the you who has problems. You are walking as the you whose prayers have already been answered. I found this incredibly reflective. Think about how you walk when you're depressed. Shoulders slumped, eyes on the ground, slow pace. Now think about how you walk when you've just landed your dream job or fallen in love. Chest out, head high, certain zip in your step. Your body language broadcasts your internal state. By consciously walking with the posture and energy of your future self, you are commanding your nervous system to stay in the future instead of the past. The key here is intentionality. You aren't just going for a stroll, you are walking into your future. Joe emphasizes that we need to become conscious of our unconscious habits. Most of us walk, talk, and move on autopilot. This practice forces you to be present in every step. You're practicing being supernatural in the middle of your life. My biggest takeaway from this chapter was the idea of staying in the state. If you can walk for 20 minutes while feeling like a millionaire, or a healed person, or a genius, you are training your brain and body to stay connected to the field while you're active. This makes it much harder for the external world to trigger you back into your old personality later in the day. It's about being in the world, but not of it. You're moving through the 3D physical space, but your energy is rooted in the 5D quantum potential. It's a powerful way to tell the universe, I'm ready, I'm already being the person I asked to become. My key takeaway. I don't have to wait for my life to change to feel powerful. I can practice being powerful every time I walk to my car or head to the grocery store. The walking meditation is my way of proving to myself that I can hold my new frequency no matter what is happening around me. I am literally stepping into my new reality, 1 foot at a time. Chapter 9, Case Studies. The proof is in the pudding. Chapter 9 is where the theory stops and the reality hits. Dr. Joe fills this chapter with case studies, and honestly, this was the part of the book that silenced my inner skeptic. It's one thing to talk about quantum frequencies, but it's another thing entirely to see medical scans of tumors disappearing or people walking again after years of paralysis. What I love about these stories is that these aren't special people. They aren't monks who lived in caves for 40 years. They're common people, moms, accountants, students, who simply decided to get disciplined with the work. The common thread in every single story is that these people reached a point where they were more in love with their future vision than they were committed to their past pain. One story that really stuck with me was about a woman who had a massive chronic health issue. She had tried everything, doctors, diets, pills, and nothing worked. In her meditations, she realized she was holding on to a frequency of victimhood. She was defined by her illness. When she finally let go of that identity and reached that state of no body, no one, her body began to repair itself at a cellular level. It's like she finally got out of the way and let her internal intelligence do its job. Joe explains the science of what's happening here. Epigenetics. We used to think our DNA was our destiny, but we now know that our environment and our internal emotional environment can switch genes on or off. By changing their energy, these people were signaling new genes to make new proteins. They were literally building a new body from the inside out. My reflection on this chapter is that belief is a powerful drug. But Joe isn't asking for blind faith. He's asking for evidence. He measures the brain waves and heart rates of his students because he wants them to see that they are actually changing. When you see someone else heal themselves, It breaks a 4-minute mile barrier in your own mind. You start to think, if they can do it, why can't I? These case studies serve as a mirror. They show us that the only thing standing between us and our supernatural potential is our attachment to our current identity. These people had to die to their old selves to be reborn. It sounds dramatic, but in terms of biology and neurology, that's exactly what happened. They stopped firing and wiring the old circuits and started a brand new habit of being. My key takeaway: miracles aren't accidents or gifts for a lucky few. They are a result of a specific internal process. If I apply the formula, clear intention, elevated emotion, with enough consistency, the biological results are inevitable. These stories aren't just nice to read. They are evidence of what is possible for me if I get out of my own way. And Chapter 10, the pineal gland. Chapter 10 is the climax of the book's technical side. If the heart is the magnet and the brain is the computer, the pineal gland is the antenna. Dr. Joe refers to it as the seat of the soul, or the transducer. This tiny pea-sized gland sitting in the center of your brain is responsible for some of the most profound supernatural experiences a human can have. Normally, the pineal gland is known for secreting melatonin, which helps us sleep. But Joe explains that when we use the breath, from Chapter 5, to push cerebrospinal fluid up against the gland, we put mechanical pressure on it. This pressure activates piezoelectric crystals within the gland. When these crystals are stressed, they generate an electrical charge, essentially turning the pineal gland into a high-powered radio receiver. Once this antenna is activated, it begins to pick up frequencies from beyond our three-dimensional reality. It takes information from the quantum field and converts it into vivid 3D biological imagery. This is why people in deep meditation report experiences that feel more real than reality. They aren't just imagining things. Their brain is literally processing a higher frequency of information. What I found most reflective here is the chemistry. Joe explains that once the pineal gland is activated, it upgrades the melatonin molecule into powerful metabolites. Some of these are similar to the most potent visionary substances on Earth. One version makes your dreams incredibly vivid. Another relaxes your body while keeping your mind awake. And the most advanced version, often called the God molecule, connects you to a sense of universal oneness. I realized after reading this that we are literally wired for the divine. We have a biological portal built right into our skulls. The reason most of us never experience this is that we are too busy being stressed. When we are in survival mode, our energy is stuck in the lower centers, and the pineal gland stays dormant or even calcifies. By practicing the meditations, we are essentially cleaning this antenna. When the pineal gland fires, it releases a chemical called dimethyltryptamine, DMT, and other neurotransmitters that create a profound shift in consciousness. This isn't just about seeing lights, it's about a total biological upgrade. Your body is being flooded with light and information that reorganizes your health and your perspective on life. My takeaway is that we don't need external substances to have a mystical experience. We have the pharmacy inside of us. If we can master the breath and the focus, we can tune into frequencies that give us answers to our deepest questions and heal our bodies in ways that defy medical logic. My key takeaway: my brain is capable of much more than just processing my daily to-do list. I have a biological gateway to the quantum field. By applying pressure to the pineal gland through specific breathing and meditation, I can move beyond my five senses and experience a reality that is far more expansive and supernatural than I ever imagined. Chapter 11, Space-Time and Time-Space. Chapter 11 is where Joe takes us into the deep physics of how reality is structured. It can get a bit heady, but the way I look at it, it's the difference between being a passenger in life and being the pilot. He breaks reality into two worlds: Space-time and time-space. Most of us spend our entire lives in space-time. This is the 3D world we see with our eyes. In space-time, there's an infinite amount of space, and it takes time to move through it. If you want a new house, you have to work for years' time to buy it in a specific location, space. In this realm, we feel separate from everything. I am here, and the thing I want is over there. Because of that separation, we feel like we have to hustle and chase our goals. But then there's time-space. This is the quantum field, or the 5D reality. In this realm, the rules flip. There is an infinite amount of time, all moments happening at once, and space is compressed into a single point. This is the realm of frequency and energy. In time-space, you don't go anywhere to get what you want. Instead, you tune into the frequency of what you want, and you draw it to you. The reflection I had here was about how much effort I waste. When I'm in survival mode, I'm trying to force matter to change matter, like trying to move a pool ball by blowing on it. It's exhausting. But when I move my consciousness into time-space, I'm working with energy. Joe explains that when we become no body, no one, we are essentially entering the eye of the needle into this 5D world. In this chapter, Joe explains that every potential is already a thought in the mind of the universe. When you are in time-space, you aren't dreaming about the future. You're actually visiting it. You're experiencing the frequency of that potential. Because there is no separation in the quantum, the moment you match the frequency of wealth or health, you're actually connected to it. This changed how I view my meditations. I stopped seeing them as a way to get something in the future and started seeing them as a way to be something in the moment. If I can experience the reality of my dream in the now of time-space, then the 3D world of space-time has no choice but to reflect that change. It's like the shadow, 3D, following the object, 5, the energy. My key takeaway: I need to stop being a victim of linear time. Instead of waiting for things to happen, I need to go into the time-space of the quantum field during my meditations and collapse the space between me and my dreams by becoming the frequency of the dream itself. When I change the energy in 5D, the 3D world has to catch up. Chapter 12, the pineal gland, the holy grail. If Chapter 10 was the introduction to the antenna, Chapter 12 is the deep dive into the actual mystical experience. Dr. Joe calls the pineal gland the holy grail because it is the key to moving beyond our human senses and experiencing a reality that is normally hidden from us. This is where the science gets truly wild and the supernatural becomes biological. In this chapter, Joe explains that the pineal gland is a neuroendocrine transducer. A transducer is something that changes one form of energy into another. Think of a TV antenna. It picks up invisible electromagnetic waves and turns them into a picture on your screen. Your pineal gland does the exact same thing with the quantum field. It picks up frequencies that exist beyond the visible light spectrum and turns them into profound internal imagery. One of the coolest things I learned here is about the biological upgrade. When the pineal gland is activated by that pumping breath we talked about, it releases specific chemicals that are far more powerful than normal neurotransmitters. It starts producing benzodiazepines, which relax the body completely, and vasopressins, which help the body hold onto water and energy. But the real magic happens when it creates DMT, dimethyltryptamine. This chemical is what allows the brain to perceive other dimensions or mystical realms. I found it really reflective to think about how our biology is literally built for godlike experiences. Joe explains that when the pineal gland fires, it creates a circularly polarized light. This isn't just regular light. It's a high-frequency energy that carries information. This is why people report seeing geometric patterns, entities, or universal truths during deep meditation. Their brain is finally tuned into the radio station of the universe. The aha moment for me was realizing that this isn't just for fun. When you have a mystical experience, it changes your baseline. You realize that the real world of bills and traffic is actually the illusion, and the world of energy is the truth. This realization removes fear. When you aren't afraid anymore, your body stops producing stress hormones and your health begins to skyrocket. You aren't just meditating anymore. You are upgrading your human operating system. Joe emphasizes that to get the holy grail to fire, you have to be able to stay in the void, the blackness of the present moment, without getting impatient. You have to wait for the energy to build. It's like waiting for a pot of water to boil. If you keep taking it off the heat by checking the time or thinking about your day, it'll never happen. You have to be all in. My key takeaway: I have a portal in my brain that can give me a direct experience of the divine. It's not a myth or a metaphor. It's a biological fact involving the pineal gland. By mastering my energy and my breath, I can trigger a chemical release that changes my perception of reality forever. I'm not just a human having a spiritual experience. I am a spiritual being with a biological transducer built specifically to connect me to the infinite. Chapter 13, Project Coherence, Changing the World. Chapter 13 shifts the focus from the individual to the collective. Dr. Joe introduces Project Coherence, and it's a powerful reminder that we don't live in a vacuum. If we can change our own internal chemistry and energy, what happens when a group of people does it together? Can we actually influence the world around us? According to the data Joe presents, the answer is a resounding yes. This chapter really opened my eyes to the interconnectedness of everything. Joe explains that human beings are like individual cells in a larger body, the Earth. We are all broadcasting an electromagnetic field. When we are stressed, angry, or fearful, we contribute noise and incoherence to the global field. But when we are in a state of heart coherence, feeling love, gratitude, and peace, we broadcast a signal that is orderly and constructive. The aha moment for me was learning about the Global Coherence Initiative. Joe cites studies showing that when a large group of people meditates together on peace or love, there are measurable drops in crime rates, violence, and even war during those times. It's called the Maharishi effect. It proves that peace isn't just an idea, it's a physical frequency. If enough people tune into that frequency, it overrides the static of the collective consciousness. I found it really reflective to think about my own responsibility. Every time I lose my temper or dwell on a grudge, I'm not just hurting myself. I'm literally polluting the collective energy field. On the flip side, every time I sit down to meditate and reach that state of wholeness, I'm contributing to a global healing. We are all Wi-Fi routers for energy, and we get to choose what kind of signal we want to broadcast. Joe also talks about the Schumann resonance, which is basically the Earth's heartbeat or frequency. Research shows that our brain waves and heart rhythms can actually synchronize with the Earth's magnetic field. When we are in coherence, we are in sync with the planet. This is why being in nature feels so healing. We are literally retuning our instruments to the Earth's natural frequency. Project Coherence is Joe's way of using his workshops to heal the planet. He has thousands of people around the world meditating at the same time, intending for the greatest good for everyone. The data shows that these collective meditations actually cause spikes in the Earth's magnetic field. We are literally charging the planet with the frequency of love. My takeaway is that I am never just one person. My internal state matters to the whole. By taking the time to bless my own life and the lives of others, I am participating in a global shift. We don't have to wait for politicians or world leaders to change the world. We can start changing the global weather right now from the inside out. My key takeaway: I am a contributor to the collective consciousness. My energy is my message to the world. By practicing coherence, I'm not just healing myself, I'm helping to raise the vibrational baseline of the entire planet. We are all connected in the quantum field, and love is the most powerful signal we can send. Chapter 14. Case Studies, It Could Happen to You. We've reached the end of the book, but as Dr. Joe points out in Chapter 14, this is actually just the beginning of the journey. This final chapter isn't about new techniques. It's about integration. He brings us back to more real-world stories of people who achieved the impossible, but he frames them as a challenge to the reader. The message is clear. If you've read this far and understood the science, you no longer have an excuse to play small. One of the stories that hit me the hardest in this wrap-up was about a person who healed from a severe, incurable genetic condition. They didn't just get better, they literally rewrote their biological expression. Joe uses these final cases to show that the supernatural isn't a gift from the heavens. It's a skill that can be mastered with repetition. These people weren't lucky, they were disciplined. They did the work when they didn't feel like it, and they believed in their future more than their present pain. My big reflection on this concluding chapter is the idea of consistency over intensity. A lot of us get fired up after reading a book, but then we drop the practice after 3 days. Joe emphasizes that to stay supernatural, you have to make this your new way of life. You have to wake up every morning and ask, who do I want to be today? Because if you don't choose your personality, your old programs will choose it for you. Joe also talks about the side effects of this work. It's not just about healing a disease or getting a new house. The real side effect is a sense of inner peace and wholeness that doesn't depend on the outside world. When you realize that you can generate joy, love, and gratitude just by closing your eyes, you become truly free. You stop being a victim of the economy, your boss, or your past. You become the creator of your own experience. In the end, the book leaves us with a choice. We can go back to being common, living by the laws of cause and effect, waiting for something outside of us to change how we feel inside, or we can choose the uncommon path, being the cause of the effect we want to see. We can signal the gene ahead of the environment. We can walk as our future selves before the future has even arrived. My personal takeaway from the entire journey is that becoming supernatural really just means becoming fully human. We were designed to create, to heal, and to connect with higher frequencies of information. We've just been hypnotized by society to believe we are limited. Dr. Joe's work is the dehypnotization process. It's a manual for reclaiming our power, my key takeaway. The supernatural is my natural state. I have the biology, the chemistry, and the neurological hardware to create whatever reality I desire. The only thing I need to do is show up for myself every day, get beyond my old identity, and stay in the generous present moment until my new life finds me. The book is essentially a bridge between ancient mysticism and modern neuroscience, proving that you don't need a miracle to change your life. You just need to master your own biology. What's good about it? It empowers you with the realization that your supernatural potential isn't a gift for a lucky few, but a repeatable, scientific process that anyone can master with enough heart and discipline. Thank you for listening.